As a mother to my 3-year-old Evie, I take my responsibility to teach her to live in and navigate a very complicated and imperfect world very seriously. A world that has a long way to go before it reaches its full potential when it comes to justice, equality, and harmony. So what do I say to my 3-year-old when she sees a man digging through the neighborhood bin? What do I tell her when we see a mother and daughter begging on the street? The answers to these questions are not easy, nor are they the best examples of harsh injustices in the world. But I believe that understanding begins by living it day to day, at home, and as a teacher in my second home, the classroom. I believe that it comes from leading with empathy as the first step. Throughout my life, I've tried hard to travel to impoverished neighborhoods and work in soup kitchens and donate toys during the holidays. But I think I really ended up participating in what could be called performative activism. This idea of feigning involvement in a greater movement, but without a really clear goal. I want to go beyond handing out food and clothing donations, beyond painting a school in a poor town from blue to red. These actions did not come from a place of understanding and empathy. And it's really more important they fail to address the real problems of the people involved. So how can one challenge and dismantle these systems of privilege and power through empathy? I now try to bring ideas of change and actionable kindness into my home and classroom in a more meaningful way. I believe that the things we have not directly experienced, we can learn. Perhaps what I can do is read books, teach, read poetry, theater, analyze photography, to discuss the inequalities of power, the injustice in my classroom. Taking my students to the World Press photo exhibit at the CCCB. Here they saw the anguish of climate change, explore the stories of the lost girls of Nigeria, and thought about kids whose lives were very different than their own. Empathy and action go hand in hand, and I believe that art and literature are not just eye-opening, but heart-opening. For example, through literature, you spend weeks with these characters in their homes, with their families, and with their struggles. And you often find yourself much more connected than you would to a statistic or a news story about the same world plight. Arthur Miller makes us question privilege and power, the meaning of success, especially taking on perspectives outside of our affluent community. And we care about Willie and Biff, and we want to see them repair their relationship. They reflect a suffering that we all see in ourselves at times. Margaret Atwood inspires us to discuss religious theocracy and personal freedoms in order to pose questions that are globally relevant. We grow to sympathize with Offred, and our eyes and hearts are open to many women who share those similar struggles around the world. Langston Hughes and Toni Morrison help us hear the voices of marginalized African Americans in order to learn compassion. We fall in love with little Pecola and experience her abuse, and we are ultimately devastated when she's destroyed by the damages of racism. Amplifying the representation of marginalized communities, providing perspectives, and seeking out and featuring voices and experiences of others is one small step toward action. When art and literature confront us with a shocking truth, we're made to refigure or even obliterate the things that we thought we knew. We see through others' suffering, and we begin to bend toward action. Once seen, a stark injustice will forever affect the way you navigate the world around you. It will shape your political standing, and it will influence the policies that you support and maybe even create one day. My students will go on to lead major companies and drive large teams and have enormous social influence one day. They'll surely reach much wider communities than I. And I'm so encouraged by the good work that they've already done with me. And my hope is that once they graduate and move out into the world, they continue that work. I hope my students will not suffer, and I hope that they do not know and come into contact with devastating pain. But I do hope that they build a conscience and understand how much pain exists in this big world around us and take action. And I also hope that they push their boundaries of their comfort levels. I hope that this is a little more likely through my small role as their literature teacher. And this begs a question. When should empathy for others come at a cost? How much should we take on? Let me share a few stories that I think go beyond empathizing through literature and how we can push ourselves to commit to more actionable empathy. A dear friend and colleague here at ASB enacted a huge impact when he unexpectedly received an honor for being a large contributor to an organization called Playgrounds for Palestine. He had set up a standing $20 a month donation, left it running for years, and unknowingly became the largest donor when the playground was finally built. And this was not a huge commitment, but it was just beyond that line of volunteerism and made a large impact. In 2015, a friend in Portland, Oregon, reacted to Trump's promises of building a border wall. She had a close-knit community of Mexican-American friends, and she was appalled at the anti-Mexican rhetoric and sentiments that were resurfacing. As a designer with some clout in the business world, she began making trips to Oaxaca and Chiapas, meeting with women's collectives, negotiating prices on crafts, meeting them at their asking price or even higher. And through her love of this community and these people, her sincere compassion, she brought the art of a faraway place back to shops in her town, just opening people's hearts a little bit to another culture. My father, Romanian immigrant, has a strange, dark secret that I learned about through photos and documents a few years ago. Unbeknownst to me, he and my mom divorced when I was in middle school, and no one knew. No, they were not on the rocks. There was not like some facade they were keeping up. He secretly remarried a woman in Romania, a dear friend of his, so that he could help her visa process to get to the States. My parents have never spoken to me about it. And this woman was then reunited with her Romanian partner who was in the States. My father sacrificed what could have been his safety and freedom to help this woman reunite with an old lover. And I don't know, I think they're married again. I'm not sure what's going on there. I can't ask. I shouldn't even know about this, but I'm still so proud of this powerful act of empathy and risk-taking that my father took. And I've recently had one deeply touching story of giving that has changed Evie and I forever. A bit of background first. My parents fled communist Romania in 1987 as political refugees, escaping persecution, censorship, and a brutal police state. When the invasion on Ukraine began, when women and children were fleeing their homes, I thought that I could offer more than dry goods and winter coats. I wanted to offer a stepping stone, to these families to help them get back on their feet, to help them feel empowered to continue their lives. Throughout the spring of that year, I hosted 5 different families from Ukraine who had fled the war. And this is one of their videos of them coming on the train. No, that's it. This family stayed the longest. This is Susha, Galina, and Babushka. They stayed for months. While they looked for work, they applied for visas to countless other countries, and had these tearful, long conversations with the brother and the father of the family who had stayed behind to serve. It wasn't easy, cramming 5 people into a small apartment in Gracia, the shower schedules, and the no privacy and time to yourself. It was really hard on us. And Evie didn't understand much. But what she did understand is that they didn't have a home and they needed one. Needless to say, they became like a second family to us. They're now well and healthy, starting a new life in Toronto. And I know that I accepted these Ukrainian refugees into my home, perhaps because of my own Eastern European roots. I empathize with them because of my family's own trauma with an oppressive regime. This conflict specifically gave me a really distinct and narrow window of opportunity to participate in putting some good into the world. For Susha, Galina, and Babushka, I was an integral in making the world a better place for them for those few months. But that's not true for many other injustices, inequalities, and atrocities across the world. There will be some that I will never see, much less be a part of alleviating. To be clear, you don't have to travel across the world to buy woolen shawls. You don't have to traffic human beings illegally across borders. Please don't tell anyone about that. But I am asking you to step out of your comfort zone a bit. And not just step out, but make it grow to envelop others. For me, it's personal. It's the next generation. It's my incredible students and my little girl. I want them as graduates to keep reading and challenging, to think critically about the world around them. For me, it's about making sure that this happens in the future generation. I want Evie to understand what the rainbow flags are in people's balconies and why Catalan is a language that's so fiercely defended, and to know that we have the power to bring more good into this world. I'm not here because I claim to have all the solutions to these societal problems, not for Evie and not for you. But what if we lead with empathy and ask to hear other people's stories and share our own? And perhaps go a little further and step into someone's story and invite others to step into ours. There will be many opportunities in our lives to do small and large actions, and I encourage you to open that door wide and walk through it with large steps of compassion. What gives me hope that this approach to empathy works? When my house cleared out a little bit and I didn't have any refugees in my home for a while, I had some friends over, we'd have some dinner parties, but Evie's only connection was that people who came to her home may have been in a similar state as the Ukrainian families that had been passing through all those months. So she turned to me at dinner one day and said, "If they don't have a house, they can stay in ours." Thank you.